Hello and welcome to the Break Exchange webinar series. I'm Kim Whitmore, the director of the Break Exchange. I want to just start by sharing a little bit about the Break Exchange, and then I will introduce our speakers for today and turn it over to them. So the Break Exchange is an international group of researchers, respite providers, agencies, and individuals, all that are committed to building a culture of evidence-based respite care. We want to thank and acknowledge our partners in this work, the International Short Break Association, the Arch National Respite Network and Resource Center in the US, Shared Care Scotland, and Marquette University in the United States. There are many benefits to joining the Break Exchange to help you connect, learn, share, and collaborate with one another. For connecting, we have an incredible global network, again, of researchers, respite providers, agencies, and other individuals. We started a new monthly networking hour on the second Monday from 12 to 1 Central Standard Time, and encourage you to join us for that very casual opportunity to connect and meet one another. We currently have close to 200 members from 15 countries in the exchange and growing. So if you are not already signed up for our Break Exchange newsletter, we encourage you to do that so you can get connected, and please share information with your colleagues and others so that we can continue to grow this great network. We have the opportunity to learn from and with each other about evidence-based respite care practices and research that's happening around the world, and many opportunities to share. So if you are doing great things, have innovative evidence-based practices, or are engaged in research, we want you to be able to use this network to help share that through our monthly e-newsletters, by helping to present on a webinar like today. We can post information on our website and our social media platforms. So really encourage you to use this as an opportunity to brag and share about the great work that you're involved in your local organizations and in your countries. We also hope to use the Break Exchange as a way to connect and collaborate with one another. So if you are a researcher or an evaluator and you're looking for community-based partners or programs to partner with, this is a great place to connect, and vice versa. If you are running a respite program or have a question or something that you think you want to explore as a research or evaluation project, this is a place where you can come and find a researcher to partner with to help you do that work. We hope that you can use this network to identify those potential partners. One way that you can do that and help facilitate that is making sure that you create and complete your member profile on our website. This allows you to be listed in our searchable member database, where you can then go and identify people that are either located where you're located and working in areas that you're interested in. And so we encourage you to complete your member profile and use that to help identify potential partners for projects. So there's lots of ways to stay connected to the Break Exchange. You can connect with us on social media. You can visit our website, join our email list, and again, create that member profile on that website. And always email us if you have any questions or ideas for the Break Exchange. Just a reminder for each of us that are doing this important work and promoting respite and self-care and short breaks, that we need to practice that ourselves. So again, I love to have a quote about this in presentation. So this says, self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. And I know this has been especially challenging times during COVID, and we all need a good reminder to take care of ourselves so that we can help take care of others. So without further ado, I am going to invite our presenters to come to the floor. We're so excited to have Dr. Jill Toms and Dr. Louise Prendergast presenting about their study on TRIO, which is a community-based day support service for people living with dementia in Wales. I'll let them share more about it and really look forward to hearing more about their work. So I will pass it off to you, Dr. Toms.
Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you everyone who's joined us today. I'll just share my screen because I'm not very good at multitasking. So if I do this first, it will hopefully go better. Right, so again, thank you for this opportunity to share our ongoing research project. I just want to start with a few acknowledgements. The study we're talking about today is funded by Welsh Government through Health and Care Research Wales, And the project involves researchers from Bangor University in North Wales, who are part of the Developing Evidence in Rich Practice programme, the Centre for Ageing and Dementia Research, and the Centre for Health Economics and Medicines Evaluation. We also have two project partners. They are PSS UK Limited, who provide the TRIO project, and Shared Lives Plus. So we have quite a big project team involving a range of different individuals and organisations. In the presentation today, we'll cover the need for short breaks, though I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone present today why there is a need for short breaks. And we'll also explain why we're using a logic model to inform and as the basis for our study. We'll explain a bit about the TRIO study, and specifically we're going to focus on phase 1 and 2 of the study today, which is a rapid literature review and an interview study, because as I said, this is an ongoing study. But these first 2 phases of the study have built a TRIO logic model, and Louise is going to, towards the end of the presentation, share the draft logic model we've developed. So just in case some of you might be wondering what I mean by a short break, because it's a term I've used a couple of times now, and this image might represent what the term conjures up. In our study, we used the definition of a short break provided by Shared Care Scotland. In the definition, you'll see that a short break could encompass many different things, including day support. And I'm just going to pause for a minute or two to let people read the definition for themselves. So many people provide informal care to their family members, friends or neighbours. For instance, 3.7 million employees in England and Wales provide regular care to a family member, and you'll see the date on this, and so the figure is likely to have increased since the COVID pandemic. We pulled out this statistic from amongst the many we could have cited because it highlights the ripple effects of providing support on employment and therefore the economy and other aspects of society. Unfortunately, many carers report negative mental and health impacts as a consequence of providing care, as well as the impact on the carer. This matters because poor carer well-being can lead to more individuals entering residential care and more pressure on public services. Short breaks are one way to support family and friend carer well-being, and also the well-being of the person with support needs. But short breaks need to be the right type, duration, time and location. Ideally, they're regular, planned and ongoing. Some fairly recent research by Whitmore in 2020 has found that if short breaks do not fulfil these requirements, they can actually increase carer stress and reduce quality of life. So traditional respite and day centre services do not always meet the requirements listed on the previous slide. Indeed, some research has found that people living with dementia accessing day services and residential respite report negative outcomes from these types of short break. In addition, people do not always want to access these traditional short breaks. Men may be especially disinclined to attend traditional day services because the activities these services provide often don't match their interests or competencies. So there is a need to explore short break models that might be associated with better outcomes. One way to start exploring these alternative short breaks is to think about using a logic model. Logic models provide an accessible summary of how a short break, creates change and what change is created. They show and help explain the relationships between short breaks, inputs, activities and outcomes. They're often used for planning, evaluation and information sharing, and at their best, they're informed by a range of perspectives. So on this slide, I've just listed the typical logic model components. So there are many ways to illustrate and draw up a logic model. But moving from left to right on this slide, inputs are the things such as funding for the short break service to operate. Activities in the next column are the things such as training for the short break staff. Then outputs This might be the type of short break provided, for instance, a singing group or an overnight stay in a residential home. But outputs can also be the way the short break is provided, for instance, through family care, relational care, or person-centered care. Outcomes are normally detailed from short-term to long-term or near to distal, if you prefer. And then in the final column, you'll see that many logic models also include factors in the surrounding context that impact on how an intervention works. For instance, it could be whether the short break is located in an urban or a rural location, or it could be the policy context it operates within. Finally, assumptions are the conditions felt to be necessary for the short break to be effective and feasible. You could sum this up as some generally understood features of the model. So just to recap, creating a logic model was the purpose of phase 1 and 2 of the TRIO study. So the TRIO study is conducting a social return on investment evaluation of a shared lives day support service called TRIO for people living with dementia and their family friend carers. The study, as I said, has 3 phases, and we're now in the process of transitioning into phase 3 of the study. Phases 1 and 2, the rapid literature review and the interview study, have created a logic model for TRIO, which is going to guide the SROI evaluation. We're not talking a lot about the SROI evaluation today, but just for those unfamiliar with the term, SROI is a form of economic analysis that examines the social value of an intervention. It calculates how much social value is created for each pound of investment in the intervention. Before saying more about the study itself, I'll take a few moments now to explain what the TRIO service actually is. So in TRIO, a small group of people who are living with mild to moderate dementia, who have similar interests to each other, are matched with a TRIO companion, which in TRIO is the name of the staff member. So they're matched with a TRIO companion who enjoys the same activities. And that small group meet together on a weekly basis in their family home of the TRIO companion. And they access the local communities for trips and activities. What makes TRIO innovative is that people are matched based on their interests and their dispositions, as well as on their needs. This means that people receive social support and can make new friendships. Then support is provided within the local community. People remain part of their community, and support is provided outside of an institutional environment. And then the final innovative feature is in TRIO day support. The same TRIO companion provides support each week, so relationships are established and maintained over time. And only 2 or 3 people are meeting consistently together. So again, the support provided can be more individualized and personalized, and more individual attention provided. There are similar schemes in several parts of the UK, but the service we explored is provided in North Wales. TRIO is a shared lives scheme. So to understand TRIO, it might help to know a tiny bit more about shared lives. Shared lives includes many types of service, as well as day support as provided in TRIO. And the other types of service it provides can be long-term care, where people live together in the family home of the shared lives carer on often a long-term basis. Intermediate care, which is similar to rehabilitation service, but is again provided in the community in the home of the staff member. Short breaks, which in the shared lives model actually means overnight stays. And outreach, where the shared lives carer works in the individual's own home. Shared lives supports people with several different support needs, including learning disabilities, mental health problems, frailty related to older age, and dementia as well. And as illustrated in the picture on the slide, Shared Lives in the UK is actually best known for providing long-term care to people who have learning disabilities. All types of the Shared Lives services contain the key features I identified for TRIO. So there's that matching process, matching the person with support needs to the Shared Lives carer based on shared interests. There's providing support in the family home of the Shared Lives carer. And in Shared Lives, support is provided by carers to just 1 or 2 individuals at a time. So there's more individualized, personalized support. So returning to the TRIO study, the first phase was the rapid literature review, and the aim here was to draft an initial logic for TRIO drawing on the wider shared lives literature. The review question were, what are the outcomes reported for stakeholders of the shared lives model, and what are the reported mechanisms of outcome? The rapid review considered all the available evidence about the outcomes of the shared lives approach and how it works. So we included evidence from all types of shared life service and from people with different support needs. We also included some model from some literature from models which are very similar to shared lives in that they contain the key features I listed on the previous slide for shared lives. We found two similar models, family support, which I think is well known to you in America. Family support isn't always similar to shared lives, and obviously we included the literature where the exact model described in the paper was similar. And we also found a model in Australia called Host Family Respite, which is very similar to shared lives day support. We included both peer review published literature and reports published in the grey literature, and we didn't set any date limits on what literature could be included. As you'll see on the slide, Paul Louise ended up screening a lot of records, and we ultimately included 16 of these. We appraised the quality of the included literature using suitable tools, and we found that just over half of our included studies had a high risk of bias. Using a narrative synthesis approach, we then organised the findings in the literature into logic model components. Our next step was to take this draft logic model to our project advisory group, which includes members with lived experience of TRIO. The logic model was then refined, and we used the initial draft logic model to guide the interviews we asked in phase 2 of the project. So phase 2 is our literature, our interview study, which is just drawing to a completion now. And our aim in this phase of the study is to make the logic model more specific for TRIO through collecting information from TRIO stakeholders. So we're using a range of semi-structured interviews and biographical narrative interview method interviews. The biographical narrative interview methods we're using with family members and friends, and also the people living with dementia themselves. And we selected this interview method for these respondents as it's proved successful in helping people engage in a conversation that elicits a wide range of reflections based on their lived experience. Due to COVID-19 social distancing regulations, all the interviews have taken place over the telephone or online. And as you'll see on the slide, we have managed to talk to a range of stakeholders, but it's also very evident on the slide that we've got a fairly small sample size. And in particular, we found it very difficult to talk to external professionals to TRIO, but who maybe make referrals into TRIO, and also people living with dementia. And we do think the COVID-19 pandemic has been a factor in this, because people living with dementia are often less comfortable having online interviews. So they've been less willing in places to take part, and our wider professionals contacts are just so busy with day-to-day stuff that the optional extra of taking part in an interview hasn't been feasible for them. We are still open to recruitment for a little while yet, and we do hope to increase the sample size a little. All the interviews we have conducted have been audio recorded and transcribed, and actually the interviews have yielded really rich data, so we have been able to really successfully refine the logic model, which Louise will come to in a minute. We analysed our interview data using an approach called framework analysis, which involves 5 steps. The first step is familiarisation, which involves reading the literature, the interviews several times. The second step, identifying a thematic framework, we had already done, because our thematic framework is the logic model components. In the indexing, we've highlighted relevant sections of the transcripts, and in charting, we've arranged these into charts so that the accounts of different respondents can be compared and contrasted. The mapping and interpretation phase is ongoing at the moment. We are comparing the interview findings to the rapid literature review findings and refining the logic model. And again, we'll take the logic model back to our participant advisory group, again, for their input. So this next slide, I'm not expecting anyone to read. It's just showing for illustration where we've laid out the draft logic model we now have for TRIO using the format I presented earlier on in the presentation. I just want to stress before Louise starts that the TRIO logic model we're presenting today is still a work in progress. So it might change a little in detail after the project advisory group review. But I'll now hand over to Louise, who will talk through the next few slides, working through this logic model components, going again from left to right on what we found for the TRIO service.
Thank you, Jill. So as you can see, this first slide is the inputs, the logic model inputs. Now, in the literature review, we found the key inputs for the shared life schemes were things like managing the service to ensure sufficient referrals were obtained and that the right shared lives carers were recruited. Well, similarly, in TRIO, we also found obtaining referrals, the TRIO companion qualities and skills, and TRIO companion recruitment. So I'll take you through those briefly. So in obtaining referrals, we found that both family, friend and shared lives TRIO carers referred to gain referrals, needing to gently sell the service to the people living with dementia, because quite often people didn't want to be seen to be cared for. They had preconceived ideas of care and support, and they thought they might lose their independence. So they'd have to sort of sell the service, the TRIO service, to the people living with dementia to make it sort of more appealing to gain referrals. The TRIO companions and skills were important inputs. As this TRIO, as a family carer is quoted on the screen, I could see the sense of, to him, of her, having her in our world, because although it was a job to her, she was very caring, she was very professional in how she conducted herself. So this was a carer talking about the qualities and skills of a TRIO companion. And in terms of TRIO companion recruitment, it was, some spoke about it being a long-winded process, as the quote says here. It took me, nearly from start to finish to get my client about a year, and I nearly gave up. I really nearly gave up. So this was like a TRIO companion talking about the extensive process involved to become a shared lives carer. Next slide, please. Could I have the next slide, please, Jill? Sorry. Thank you. So the outputs. The activities. Brilliant, thank you. So the activities, in terms of activities, the literature review found most evidence for matching people with support needs and shared lives carers based on their needs and their interests and personalities. And this was seen as necessary and important component of the shared lives approach. It was important that shared lives carer felt supported by the scheme. So in terms of TRIO, we also found that support for TRIO companions and the training of the TRIO companions, the matching and the placement preparation were important activities. So support for the TRIO companions evident as a key activity, with support from the organisation PSS. As one TRIO companion said, well, they're quite welcoming. So you can contact them directly on the phone or email. So I think there's good communication there. So TRIO companions feeling supported. TRIO companions required training. This was essential for the job, such as safeguarding and first aid. But also some TRIO companions noted that being highly caring was as important as being highly trained, and a lot of the learning in this regard came from being on the job. In TRIO, the matching process as an activity was important, and this was highlighted by family carers as well as the TRIO companions. And it was noted, though, a good match, it could look like a good match on paper, but it was only until you had this sort of going out session between the TRIO companion and the citizen, the person living with dementia, that you'd have an idea whether it was actually going to work out. So there'd be a taster session. And so matching could often be on like mobility or walking speeds, as well as the shared interests. And this is, as the quote from the trio companion says here, we go out for an initial meeting to get a feel of what the citizen is like and if they would be suitable for me. And I think you just get a feeling whether they are chatty or whether they're interacting with myself. So that's a trio companion talking about the matching process. And the placement preparation, which is where the trio companion has an understanding of the life, the needs, the sort of activities that the citizen has enjoyed and will continue to enjoy. So they're fully aware of their interests as well as their medical background, which can lead to a sense of trust for the citizen and the family carer, because they'll see that their relative or friend is being taken care of properly. Next slide, please. So we have the outputs. Now, the outputs are the things that have done from the inputs and the activities. So that's what we can see. In terms of outputs, what came across in the literature review was the importance of how support was provided, regardless of the shared lives service, and relational care was a particular feature. In TRIO, outputs are listed here, and they included consistency. As this trio companion says, it's so important you have the same person go in every week, because if you change that person, it wouldn't work. So they get to know your family and stuff and your children. So it's a consistency of the same carer at the same time where possible. It meant that the family carer can plan their day because of the consistency. They'd get to know the citizen and their family. So relational care was a notable output, which many family carers and trio companions referred to an environment which made the citizen feel like part of the family or as if they were a friend. And the informality of the trio service contributed to this, because the trio companions, they wouldn't be wearing a uniform. There'd be no indication that they were providing support and care. As one trio companion said, when we go out, we could probably pass as their granddaughter, taking them out for the day. And personalised support. The trio companions and family carers refer to citizens as being pampered, trio companions being attentive to what they needed and what they wanted. So this could be sort of like taking them to the pub if they wanted a pint, or getting their nails done, or getting their hair done. It's very much about their day. So supporting independence as an output was notable too, with the trio providing an environment that enabled the citizen to exercise choice and control. As one trio companion noted, it's like having calm and letting them know that they are in control, because in dementia, a lot have lost control in their life. They're told where to go and they're told what to do. So this was giving them some control back. Practical and emotional support was an outcome. It included the trio companion and the citizen going maybe on the bus together, having emotional support, speaking to the citizen if they had a low mood, but offering reassurance and patience. And this support was extended to the family carer as well. As one family carer said, it was like, I was like tearing my hair out, but the trio companion just understood. We've got flexible need, care that is flexible to changing needs. And this was a notable output because trio companions also recognised that plans could change depending on the needs and wishes of the citizen. So a family carer felt comfortable perhaps asking if their mum could be dropped off a little later or earlier and fit around an appointment, because as one family carer also stated, with dementia, it could be like standing on shifting sands. There could be rapid deterioration, and therefore flexibility and support was essential. Communication was an output, evident from the interviews we conducted, and they included the trio companion feeding back the details of the day to the family carer. So if the family carer had concerns, the trio companion would pick up on this and could send a photograph of themselves with the citizen having a good day and enjoying themselves. You could see, so the family carer could feel reassured that the citizen was their relative was having a good time. And also social opportunities and connections, because this was provided for the citizens, the person living with dementia, because they would be included in various outings and places and activities where they would meet other people and have these opportunities to take place in activities. Next slide, please. So we're coming to the short-term outcomes. Now, the short-term outcomes are the outcomes that we can see immediately. And as you can see here, we've got short-term outcomes for each of the three groups of people: the citizen, the person living with dementia, the carer, who will be the family or friend carer, and the trio companion. So I'll just go through these now. In trio, the outcomes reported for the person living with dementia included feeling connected. So there was lots of reports of meeting new friends and extending their social circle, taking part in meaningful activities, enjoying meaningful activities, such as singing along to their preferred music or talking in their first language, Welsh. There was also interesting this positive anticipation, and lots of people spoke about the citizens looking forward to going out with their trio companion, looking forward to their trio day. As one family carer stated, they take my mum out every Tuesday, which she absolutely loves and she looks forward to it. We have confidence was a key outcome for people living with dementia, because being with their trio companion, they could take part in activities and become friends with people that they wouldn't normally have the confidence to do. Increased self-esteem and sort of feeling normal, because the trio companion was not seen as a carer from a service, but a friend that they could go out with. And isolation and loneliness was prevented, as some trio companions reflected. Going out with the trio companion could be that person's the only person that they see all week. And of course, you have stimulation via the activities, and people reported of having more stimulation than they would just being at home. And this included being physically active as well, taking part in things like boccia, which is a sit-down bowls, or sit-down aerobics, chair aerobics, and then the carers, they spoke too of having short-term positive outcomes. So the family carers could enjoy a break from caring. They had peace of mind, because they knew that the person with dementia was being looked after. And they had that sort of release. And this is a lovely quote from a carer talking about their relative who accesses trio, is taken out with trio. She said, it's like taking your bra off at the end of the night, you know, that big feeling of release that you don't have to worry for 2 hours. So this was meaningful respite. Interestingly, it was also for the carer to see the citizen happy. It was when they knew that their relative was happy, then they felt happy. And things like maintaining their roles and identity. So for one person, they said, well, I don't get that grumpy person at the end of the day. When he comes back, he's happy, and we have a better relationship because of that. And interesting for the trio companions too, they spoke of having job satisfaction, of feeling rewarded in their work, as this quote says, to see them at the start of the day and at the end of the day happy, and they've had that interaction. It's brilliant. There's just that job satisfaction. But they also felt of feeling connected to the family of the citizen, and having increased social interaction. So they would be enjoying activities that they might not have normally enjoyed by going out with their citizen. Next slide, please. And then we have the medium-term outcomes, which are built on, obviously, from the short-term outcomes. In the literature review, it suggested that wellbeing outcomes were maintained for individuals with support needs and shared lives carers, that people with support needs could establish social circles, which meant that they gained independence, skills and health as positive aspects in their life. So in TRIO, we found that people living with dementia, the citizens, seem to enjoy maintained independence. As one carer said, they extended his independence. It certainly stimulated his mind. So the skills were maintained as progression in activities such as the boccia or walking more with a citizen through the outings that they enjoyed, improvements in their mental health and their well-being, and quality in their life and their well-being, such as having that positive anticipation, building on that, looking forward to seeing the citizen on a weekly basis, looking forward to going out and enjoying activities. And for the carers, they too seem to have increased well-being and reduced stress over time. And as this carer said, I grew to have such confidence and a good rapport with the trio companion who was looking after him. It gave me an enormous peace. It gave me an enormous sense of peace and well-being. And so they experienced reduced stress as they knew their relative was being looked after, and they knew that they were having fun and were happy. And for the trio companions too, they experienced well-being at work and spoke of having a good work-life balance. But this is interesting, the carer saying, well, before trio, she used to just sit there and not do anything. She was quite depressed and fed up. But with trio, she's got something to look forward to. Next slide, please. So the logic model long-term outcomes. Now, the literature review suggested that in the long term, shared lives may prevent other health, support and health needs arising due to its community-based nature. And there might also be community benefits that emerge over the longer time, but these haven't been explored or evidenced robustly. So in the literature, we found evidence of reduced service demand, but also people were concerned about losing access to the service because they were doing so well in terms of mental health improvement. But this is not something we found in our research so far, and we don't have that much information about the long-term outcomes of trio. But there is a possibility that carers may be able and willing to continue caring for longer due to the earlier outcomes of increased well-being and having a break from caring and a better relationship with their relative. The citizen can be supported practically, physically and emotionally, which may help with the people living with dementia. It may help them stay at home for longer, and it may help them with their quality of life. And for example, so there was one citizen, and it may have helped them avoid residential care, as I said, staying at home for longer. So we saw some potential evidence of this. We had, one of the citizens was reported as living in an assisted home this home, their policies meant that nobody could come into the home and take the person out due to COVID restrictions. So nobody could come into the assisted living home because of COVID. So the trio companion could not actually go in to the home. And as the companion said, these buildings on top of COVID had their own restrictions. So even though at times we were allowed to take them out of the building, they couldn't come out with us. And she said their condition, the citizen, their condition deteriorated. And I think for me, it wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have deteriorated if they had something to look forward to. I mean, you could ring them, but it's not the same as taking them out. And this trio companion also saying, the opportunities that were provided, a lot of ours definitely wouldn't have had opportunity to access any of these services, because it's not just a fact that they may think, oh, I'd like to go singing. It's the actual ability of accessing the service. They wouldn't actually be able to ring a taxi. So for the person living with dementia, potentially better quality of life, staying at home for longer. For carers, potentially better quality of life, more willing and able to continue caring. And for the trio companions too, a better quality of life, maybe staying in the role for longer, happy to maintain the role of being a trio companion. Next slide, please. So we just have the next two, which is the context and then finally the assumptions. So in terms of context refers to the things in the wider environment and the policy context that impacts on how trio operates. Now in trio, some family carers and trio companions noted that there was not as much awareness as a service as there could be. And instead, there were more traditional types of care were offered. And they felt that people living with dementia and carers could be missing out. As this quote says, I think, as one TRIO companion said, I think a lot of people and the social services, they go down this social services route, as in a carer coming in once or twice a day. And sometimes I don't think people think, hang on, what other agencies are there that could support my mum and dad? So I think there needs to be a lot more awareness within social services, and a great sort of starting point for these. So this is to do with information sharing as well, having sort of like access to information about TRIO, but also COVID restrictions could have an impact in terms of context, an impact on activities. So things like taking the citizen out, as one person said, eating outside with an 80-year-old is not always best. They can get cold easily, and we end up having to have something in the car. And this was referring to the social restrictions and cafes not being opened during COVID. And finally, next slide, please. The assumptions. Well, we found in the literature there was evidence to support two assumptions about shared lives. Firstly, most shared life services had to have lower or similar costs to the available alternatives. And shared lives, it doesn't suit everybody. Sometimes there are no positive outcomes reported. Now in TRIO, one of the companions did note that the service might not fit everybody. And one TRIO companion spoke of a person living with dementia who did not want to leave her home. She did not want to feel engaged. She couldn't be persuaded to. So even if the relative thought it might be the best thing for them, you can't assume that everybody's going to want to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. So the social return on investment evaluation is now going to try and quantify how much of the socially valuable outcomes Louise has just talked through, how much of those outcomes are experienced by the current group of TRIO users, so people living with dementia, their family member and friend carers, but also the TRIO companions who are providing those day support as well. When the study is completed, we hope we will have contributed an evidence-based logic model for TRIO and similar models of day support, evidence about TRIO outcomes and their social value, and we hope if we manage to enlarge our sample a little, some information about how TRIO contributes to wider stakeholders such as other professionals and the local community. Of course, there will, as always, be a lot more to find out and learn, but we hope our findings will help inform service commissioning, perhaps personal decision-making around day support and short break options, policy development around short breaks, and also inform future research on short breaks. So just to conclude, just to acknowledge some of the references we used in the presentation, and to also acknowledge the source of any images used in the presentation as well. And it's only left for me to say, because I'm based in North Wales today, Diolch yn fawr am wrando, which means thank you very much for listening. And obviously we'd be delighted to hear your views and ideas and what we presented, and we're also happy to try and answer any questions you may have. If you'd rather not ask questions today, that's absolutely fine. I've provided my email or all our email addresses on the slide, so do feel free to drop one of us an email after today if you'd rather get in touch this way. Thank you. And I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for sharing that great presentation about really exciting work. I'm going to open it up to see if any of our attendees have some questions. I have a couple questions, but we'll see if anyone who is attending live has any questions they want to ask, and feel free to either post in the chat any questions or unmute and just make a comment. And if they'll be shy, then I'll ask a question of you. Okay, so my first question, you mentioned briefly that you were using an advisory committee in this project, but you didn't go into great detail. And I'm really curious if you could just share a little bit more about the role of the advisory committee, and because I think that's a really important tool that a lot of researchers aren't using. And so it's great to see you using that. And it's also a great way for respite agencies and programs and even carers and individuals with disabilities to get involved in research, to be a part of those committees. So I'm curious to know how you recruited yours and what purpose they're serving in your project.
Yes, of course. Our advisory group is made up of a number of different people, actually. So we've got the research team, our project partners, so the service providing Trio, but also Shared Lives Plus is a member of our advisory group, have a representative. We have a couple of other researchers, academics, who have an interest in short breaks research, who are also helping to inform the project. And then we have our key members, who are for individuals with lived experience relevant to Trio. So we have a Trio companion in our advisory group. We have a family member, friend, carer, and we also have a lady living with dementia who has recently joined us. And our advisory group meets roughly every 3 to 4 months, and their role is very much to inform the project and how it runs. So participant information sheets, the interview questions, informing how we're interpreting our findings. The advisory group has a key role in helping with all of those aspects of the study. And towards the end, we hope, of the study, we hope our advisory group will also help us share the study findings in the best possible way, so we reach the people we want to reach with the findings.
That's great. Yeah, so for people watching who aren't as familiar with the use of advisory committees for research projects, it's an incredible tool. It helps make your research so much more meaningful, I would say. I see you agreeing within that. And it can really just strengthen the relevance of your work, and also the translation to, once you have, completed your project, how we translate those findings into practice and policy change, like being able to leverage a community advisory board or a project advisory committee, whatever you call it. That group can be really instrumental in helping your project become more than just a published report of findings. And so I'm really glad to hear you guys are using an advisory committee for that work. That's great. I'll make an offer for any other questions from the audience before I ask another one here. We'll give them a few seconds. Or comments, feel free to comment as well. They're a shy group today. You guys did such a good job explaining things. So I'll ask another question. My next question is, as you look forward to phase 3 of your project, the social return on investment, could you just describe a little bit more about what's going to be involved? Like, what are you actually going to be measuring as far as social outcomes in phase 3 of your project?
Of course. Louise, can I hand over? Would you like me to answer, or would you like to answer this, because you've had more of a role in developing that phase?
Am I unmuted? Yeah. Yep. Just, how you've got this running and you're talking and you just go, oh, I'm on mute. Okay. Yeah, so what this is leading on from your point of the project advisory group. This is one of the sort of most important things of having the project advisory group on board, because what you're doing throughout, you're finding out what are the outcomes that are important to the stakeholders, what's important to the people living with dementia, what's important to the Trio companions, what are the sort of things that are important to them. So what we're needing to do is we're finding out, we're in the process of finding out, as you've seen, the short-term outcomes and medium-term and the long-term outcomes. So we have sort of issues of measuring well-being. We have job satisfaction. So we'll have all these sort of outcomes, and what we will do is then measure them by asking how many people feel that they experience that, and we'll be doing that through sending out questionnaires that actually sort of quantify how many people actually think this. So we're going to the project advisory group next and saying, look, do you agree with these? Is this something you feel comfortable with this? Do you think this is something that, you feel could be answered to other, they're not leading questions, and they're often taken from various standardized scales already. So something like a flourishing scale that already measures well-being. And then we put a financial proxy on these outcomes. So that's the sort of stage that we'll be looking at.
That's great. And are you working with a health economist or someone to help you with the financial estimates of those outcomes, or how are you quantifying those estimates?
Okay, so so we do have undertaking I've already done one SROI, but we're also involved in some more training, and we also have health economists on the participant advisory board as well. So we have sort of like that expertise there. So it does come down to sort of like putting a financial proxy on that outcome, but it's about, and this is the important thing with the SROI, it's about co-production. So you're looking at what's important to the people, not sort of what's important to policymakers necessarily, but what's important to the people who are experiencing that service. So that's why we've got these open interviews, so that they can tell us what's important to them, as opposed to just like a structured interview or structured questionnaire, which is really interesting because you get to hear their perspectives and you find out things that you might not have known ordinarily so yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely have to have you guys back on another webinar once that is completed, so we can hear more about the results of phase 3 of your project. That's really exciting. Any other questions or comments? Katie, I see you put your video on. Did you want to say something?
I just really like that you guys focus so much on people's interests. I think that'll draw a lot of attention and maybe make people more interested and more willing to kind of participate as well, because that's a huge way that people connect, is through shared interests. So I really liked that aspect.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to reiterate, I think you'll have the slides, won't they, Kim? So if anyone's watching this on the recording and wants to get in touch, please do just drop us an email.
Yeah, great. Any other questions or comments from the audience?
Hi.
Hi, Laura. Welcome.
Hi, Laura.
So I have a question. I can't take this filter off, and I don't know how to take it off. This filter.
Oh, that's very cute.
Actually, I have the same problem. I don't know how it happened.
And their names too. They're wolf. I don't know either how to take it off or change it.
Yes, it is very confusing.
Do you have children at home that did that to you?
Yes, I have
maybe.
my nephew, my sobrinito.
Great, I love it. Did you guys have a question or comment for the presenters?
Because
Very
I'm
good.
afraid I can't help with filters.
I also don't know why, but when I press 2, it does this.
Oh, that's too cute. Oh.
We don't know how to take it off.
I wish I could help you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We will try to take this off, because we have work to do and people keep laughing. We don't know how to fix this.
Oh, well, good luck. Did you guys want to ask a question for the panelist as well?
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Well, I just wanted to make one last, I guess more of a comment, 2 comments actually. So the first is the use of the logic model in your work, I think was really innovative. I've not seen that done, where you kind of selected that framework to guide your inquiry and analysis. And for those that are in the practice side, logic models are an incredible tool. And although logic models can be a bit overwhelming sometimes to put together, one resource that I've found really helpful is called the tier list logic model. I'm not sure if you've heard of the tier list logic model. I can post in the chat and share some information out, but it's a really user-friendly way to engage a group to think about how to complete a logic model. So it asks very plain language questions to help you identify the different elements that fall into a logic model structure. So it's a really nice resource. I really love logic models, so I was very happy to see that. And then the last comment I want to say, you mentioned a couple times throughout the presentation about how the participation and with the TRIO companion, having that time was something that the carers and the citizens, as you call them, the care recipients, looked forward to, and that was a big motivator and really helped people to get through that. And that's something I've seen in my work as well, and just in practice working with families. I will never forget in a focus group study that I did, a father said, you know, respite, short breaks are a light at the end of the tunnel. And I often think about it as, you know, for sort of everyday people, it's the weekend, right? It's the vacation from your work. It's that something that is on your calendar, and knowing that that break is coming, that vacation is coming, you can kind of push through and get through it. But for so many families, they don't have that light at the end of the tunnel. They don't have that break. And so it's if you can imagine, you know, working 24/7 and never having a break from your job, how difficult it would be to stay focused and motivated and energized to do your work. And so I think that analogy of, you know, that vacation on the calendar, that light at the end of the tunnel, is really important for us to think about, that even just that is an intervention. You know, it helps in the day-to-day mindset of carers. Obviously, when the break comes, when they have that time away, it's even more wonderful to have that. You know, we love when the vacation finally comes, sitting on the beach, relaxing, but just the mindset you have looking forward to that and planning for it is so good for your well-being. And so just wanted to kind of leave us on that, and hope that we all can find something in our own lives to look forward to. I told my husband this morning, we really got to get a vacation on the books so that I can get through the winter here in Wisconsin. But I want to again thank you both so much for taking the time to share this work. And we definitely want to hear an update when you get further along and bring you back for another webinar. Again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions for either of the presenters. And if you can always also email the Break Exchange as well, and we can connect you as well. But thank you so much for participating today. For those watching this later on the recording, we really appreciate you taking the time, and want to just thank you. I'll leave the last word to our presenters.
My last word is just, again, thank you very much. We're delighted to have this opportunity, and we'd love to come back when we finish the study to share the final findings from the social return on investment.
Yep, I second that. Everything that Jill said. And yeah, really nice to meet you all.
Wonderful. Have a wonderful day.